Today, you are going to listen to a story about a Canadian gold miner's unexpected adventures in the 1940s. Let's watch a short video about miners.
If the original inhabitants of the hundreds of mining ghost towns that dot the American West were still living today, they would have some amazing stories to tell. Of good luck and bad luck. Of hard work and courage. Of deception and cruelty. Of broken dreams and dreams come true. Now let us find out how this fascinating chapter in the opening of the American West came to be. The year is 1848, and the war between Mexico and the United States is ending, having been fought over the territories that today make up California, Nevada, Utah, and large parts of Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, and Wyoming. And for $15 million, all these lands are ceded to the United States. Earlier in this same year, gold was discovered, quite by accident, on the property of a man named John Augustus Sutter, who had come to California in 1839, not in search of gold, but to carve out an agricultural empire for himself on the banks of the Sacramento River. This discovery quickly transformed the Mexican town of San Francisco from a sleepy fishing village of 900 souls into a bustling port of 25,000, as starry-eyed gold seekers arrived daily by ship from all around the world in the hopes of striking it rich in the California gold fields. Just 10 years later, in 1858, gold was discovered in the general vicinity of Pikes Peak, just a few miles east of the Front Range of the Colorado Rocky Mountains. And almost immediately, the twin towns of Auraria and Denver City sprouted up nearby. The discovery of the Pikes Peak goldfields not only attracted hordes of unsuccessful miners who hurried back from California, it also brought a wave of between 50 and 100,000 men and a handful of women and children out from the east. For in the late 1850s, times were hard, cash was scarce, and many people who would never have left their homes in more prosperous times decided to try to cure the ills created by economic depression by searching for Colorado gold. Prospecting for gold was a fairly easy business to get into. Besides some food and a pack animal, little more than a pick, a shovel, a gold pan, and a lot of determination were needed to get started.
Let's listen to the story and think about the cause and effect. Davey Lowe, a prospector, began mining more than 40 years ago. He didn't strike it rich, but he enjoyed his life in the woods. As he grew older, he still lived alone in his cabin near Larder Lake in Ontario, Canada. He still went out every day to work his mining claims. Davey's cabin was small. It was just one crowded room with a bunk, a wood stove, and many mining maps, ore samples, and prospecting tools spilled off the shelves. But there was always room in Davey's home for the many visitors. If they were lucky, Davey would tell about his life as a prospector. Here is one of the stories that he told. One spring, my partner Fred and I were prospecting for gold up north of here. It was back in the 1940s. We had stumbled on some good rock, the kind that often contains gold. We pounded away at that rock all day. It was after sunset when we finished breaking it up. Our samples were mighty exciting. Even in the little light that was left, we could see gold in them. We knew that we had to stake our claim that night. If we didn't, someone else might beat us to it. Fred left to pace off our claim while I cut a post to mark the first corner. I had my choice of 2 trees for that post. Right beside a strong poplar was a skinny birch, no bigger around than my arm. The birch would have been faster and easier to cut, but I decided on the poplar. I swung my axe, and soon I had chopped the tree off about 3 feet from the ground. It made a good post. I was squaring off the top when I felt a tap on my shoulder. I thought it was Fred coming back for something. I swung around with my axe in my hand, and there he was, a great black bear, almost as tall as myself. He was sitting back on his haunches staring at me. I was so surprised that I just stared right back in disbelief. I had never known a bear to do such a thing. Then I panicked. His next tap might not be so gentle. I heard that you can make a bear back off if you hit it on the nose. That's the tender spot a bear has. So I let this fellow have it right on the nose with the back of my axe. Well, I misjudged that bear. He backed off a bit, but he also got mad. I could see that I would have to get out of here. My best chance was up the tree. But the only tree around was that skinny birch. I sure wish that I had been lazy and left the poplar. I made it up the tree in one leap, and the bear was right behind me. He reared up against the trunk, ripping the bark with his claws. If he wanted to get me, he didn't have to worry any. That birch was slowly bending in half. Soon I would drop right in its lap. We stayed that way for a while, me clinging to the swaying tree, the bear deciding if he should start climbing. Suddenly I could hear my partner crashing through the bush toward us. "Fred," I yelled, "there's a bear! Watch out!" I didn't want him to stumble into the bear in the dusk. My shouting seemed to make the bear even madder. He growled and shook my poor stick of a birch tree. Well, I thought it was the end of me. The bear was growling, the tree was groaning, and my arms were ready to give up. I could feel myself slipping lower and lower, nearer to those claws every second. Then crack! The tree broke, and I was falling. At the same instant, a hair-raising sound came ringing through the trees. I hit the ground right beside my bear, but as I rolled one way, he took off the other way. He ran as fast as he could to get away from the frightful clanging. When I stood up, I saw Fred banging a hammer against an old steel dinner gong. We had picked it up on an empty logging camp and hung it on our tent pole as a joke. That's the same gong you see hanging outside my cabin right now. I still use it to scare off bears. You see, that night I learned what a bear hates most, the sound of steel striking steel.